Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to week 9 or episode 9 of the Over the Head podcast. We've been at this for 9 weeks now. It seems like
episode 9 and week 9. Haven't missed a show. I've had a child and we haven't missed a show. It's worth highlighting.
Consistency is key. So we got some big news. PLL, obviously, new coach was announced in Anthony Kelly, and then we got some big trade news with the Cannons. The Cannons have been active in free agency and making trades, and Brian Holman's done a hell of a job. We got a lot to talk about PLL. And then the college scene, I mean, it has been an absolute mess. The parity, we got a new number 1, and the Terps were not terping last week. And Army is a bunch of frauds. So we'll get into all that. And then we also have a special guest coming on the show. Spencer Ford will be joining us from the Carolina Chaos, the new named GM, right? We'll get some more clarity, hopefully, on the PLL GM situation. But an exciting show, and we're going to kick it off with a guy we know well, Anthony Kelly.
Well, before we get into that, just on these topics, are we becoming journalists? So last week we talked about how there needs to be an investigation and we need some third-party journalism in pro lacrosse. We were going to break the news of the Owen Grant trade, and here, right when we sit down to record, the PLL puts out a press release. They've figured out our recording schedule. They know third-party journalists are going to break this news. We better get ahead of the cycle. So I would say they're sensing a little bit of a threat there. You think that's what happened with that? And we also did we not say Anthony Kelly to the Redwoods? I believe that was mentioned in the past too. So
yes,
credit to us.
For the audience that doesn't know, Scott Ratliff does not have social media. So we were talking about the PLL news. He thinks he just lives in this world without social media. So we were going to break the news today, and then the PLL hadn't announced it. We were like, you know what? F it. Let's just roll with it, see what happens, see if we get in trouble, see if big media comes after us, state-run media comes after us, and they announced it 12 minutes ago, right before we recorded. So we're good. Yeah. We're in the clear.
Okay. So A-Train, right? I think this is exciting. He's a guy who you and I both know very well. Just a guy who's been around pro lacrosse for a long time. He had a storied career at Ohio State, and then as a face-off guy in professional in pro outdoor in the MLL, and then he also had a pretty good NLL run there. I know he's been he runs a club lacrosse program, Resolute, out in Ohio. I know he's been in the mix for a lot of pro coaching jobs. I think for people who maybe are surprised or unfamiliar with him, he was a leader and kind of a culture driver there in the Outlaws glory years, right, when they were kind of winning everything. He was a big part of that locker room and kind of a big voice of that team, and he's stayed around the game. And, from my perspective, and I'm sure yours as well, is a really good hire. So knowing we both feel that way about him, I mean, why? What do you think he brings to the table for the Redwoods? What do you think a California Redwoods team, led by A-Train Anthony Kelly looks like?
Yeah, I think, I'm a big believer in hiring, former players that have done it at a high level. Anthony Kelly, he played for 10 years in the MLL. And,
that's a good way to get some people on Twitter mad at you. Say you had to play good to coach good.
Yeah, you had to play good to coach good.
Clip that one up.
Yeah. But not all players pan out as good coaches. You know that. I know that. But this is a guy that has been I've been texting with him for the last 3-4 years, and he's just been asking me, kind of using me as a resource to get his foot in the door. He wants to coach, assistant, literally anything he can do to get on a staff or whatever, just to get his foot in the door. And he has just been so hungry to be a head coach or an assistant coach. And then obviously this Redwoods thing had opened up, and he was in the interview process for the Carolina job, the previous Carolina job. And I think it came down to him.
And I think the Water Dogs job as well.
Yep.
He was one of I read an article that he was one of 3 finalists. And I bet you that going through those processes helped him. So one thing I know that they do in that coaching process is there's a homework assignment, right? Where they give you a kind of a salary cap, and they want you to build a spreadsheet and show how you would approach, building your roster and managing, guys at different comp levels and all that sort of stuff. So kind of having the experience of going through that process a few times, and then this Redwoods job opening up maybe late in the hiring cycle, I think that probably, was an advantage for him to just already be prepared and have gone through this process and build a relationship with the folks at the PLL, which is why I was kind of pointing to him when this job opened, because I just knew somebody that he's been active, and his resume was at the top of the list, basically.
Yeah. So he's been at it for a while, but yeah, what he brings to the table is, I mean, right, championship pedigree, played for that Outlaws team, that played for an Outlaws organization that, you know, the Outlaws were always known as one of the best organizations in lacrosse. And I think being around that for as long as he was, like, he's going to bring some of that with him, the culture to that locker room. And, you know, he wants to win a championship, and I think he knows how to get it done, right? He's played professional lacrosse for 10 years. He knows the inner workings of, like, how all that stuff works and players that do well, don't do well. And I just think he's going to bring a ton of leadership, ton of energy, fire. Obviously, if you know Anthony Kelly, he's a giant human being, and he's got such a good heart, and he's a fiery mother effer. And he's going to be giving some good speeches in that locker room before those boys head out to the playing field. So I'm excited for him.
So I have a few things. One, he probably jumps down to the top of the list. Andy Towers is gone. A-Train, in a coach's fight, A-Train probably kicks the shit out of every other coach in the PLL. So he takes over the Towers throne of being the toughest coach in the league. I think that just a couple other things. So, you know, he was a face-off guy, right? And so we're known massive fans of the face-off here on Over the Head Pod, but maybe some people would say, like, is a face-off, like, that's an interesting to go from face-off to coach when it's such a specialized position and now you're coaching a whole team. Well, it's, to me, like, the best comparison I can make here is kind of like John Harbaugh, like a special teams, like the role of the head coach so often is just culture, focus, details, organization, energy, and that's where I think he really excels. Now, he coaches club lacrosse. He's been coaching forever. He's a very skilled player. He's, you know, really capable on offense. He played offense in Team USA indoor like 4 years ago as like a 40-year-old. Came out of retirement, won a bronze medal. He won 2 bronze medals. Yeah, scored a bunch of goals. So, like, he is a capable lacrosse player, not just a face-off guy. But I do think, like, he's kind of an example of a coach where I'll be interested to see who he brings in as assistants, because I think he'll let them run with their. Most coaches kind of have their side of the ball and they hire one assistant for the other side of the ball. I'll be interested to see how he approaches that. And yeah. I think we're going to have him on hopefully next week, and we can talk to him about that. Like, are you going to run an offense or defense? And if so, which one? And where does he go for his lead assistant? Does he go to the defense side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball? I think that's going to be kind of an interesting thing to follow with him. But, in general, I think from a culture and a leadership standpoint, he's through the roof. And I have a funny story quickly. So my first ever pro lacrosse game was a Steven Berger story, which you can go back and listen to. My second ever pro lacrosse game were at Denver. And again, I just, Georgia boy and whatever. I didn't watch pro lacrosse. I admittingly was not like super familiar with, my dad played in the 70s. I knew like Frank Urso and the Pals and the Gates, but like I didn't really like know a generation of lacrosse players as I was coming into the pros. And we walk out of the locker room in Denver and we go out to warm up. And again, it's my second game. And I looked across the field and I saw fucking Anthony Kelly. And he is enormous. Like, he's, 6'4", but just like A-Train. He looks like a fucking train, just strong and wide and big. And so athletic looking. And I remember like looking at, one of my teammates at the time, and I was like, what fucking position does that guy play? I don't want to go anywhere near him. They're like face off. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I can actually live with that because he'll be down on all fours and I can run in there and swing at him. But he was a staggering presence on the field as a player for sure. Yeah. And, he 15, I pulled this up, but 1568 of 3,044 faceoffs, so just over 50% at the faceoff X to his career. And yeah, he's had an unbelievable career, and he's hungry to freaking coach. And I think they're keeping Chris Collins, the D coordinator, who's been the Redwoods. Oh, okay, there you go. They're keeping him on. I think the players, whatever. I know I talked to Train briefly, but the players wanted Coach CC to stay, and I played under Coach Collins, and I think there's literally no other coach that cares more than that guy, and he's a great coach. So so I'm glad they're keeping him on for sure. So that's interesting, and we talk like the defensive continuity is there. So again, I'm excited to hear from Train. Like, we got to talk to him because we play with them in Hawaii every year. He plays attack. Like, the guy knows how to score goals, but running an offense is different. Yeah. And I really I'll be really curious. Like, does he bring a young guy in, or is he got the whiteboard and he's drawing up X's and O's and full blown running the offense on that team? that's probably like the biggest question mark storyline for me with him stepping into that role that will be fun to follow, but a good hire for sure.
And I heard some rumors his previous jobs, a couple guys he was talking to. Kyle Sweeney popped up. Obviously, that was a D coordinator, and then Brendan Mundorf was showing interest into getting into the pro game. And, Brendan Mundorf, we all know that name. He's one of the best attackmen to ever play in college. And then at the professional level, Team USA, two-time Team USA member.
He was teammates with Train on Denver,
yep,
too.
And
so
he was
there's
teammates.
A relationship there.
Yeah, and, Brendan Mundorf knows the game, and I think that'd be phenomenal.
Yeah, but if we're going to talk about that, though, we have to say, like, as well as I do, the salary ranges for assistant coaches in pro lacrosse, you kind of have, if I understand, you kind of have one that can get paid pretty well, and then your second one is kind of like the volunteer assistant in college, where you're like, you're high-fiving them $100 on their way to the airport. So will that be enough to get a Brendan Mundorf to travel every weekend of the summer? Like, I hope so, because it'd be good for the Redwoods and it'd be good for the league. But that's the challenge, with these roles, and finding that third assistant is quite a task. Or sorry, that third coach, but that's kind of that second assistant. That's a hard thing to do. So it will be interesting to see where he lands, and is it a Mundorf, or does he just take the offense and go with somebody to kind of run the box and warm up the goalies, and a younger guy or somebody trying to break into the league? Like, who knows? That it's going to be interesting. But like I said, we'll get him on, and we'll get answers straight from the source to all these questions here soon. And
the Redwoods had that Notre Dame dynamic. Do we see an Ohio State dynamic? I mean, Ohio State, the Buckeyes are hot right now.
The Buckeyes are hot right now. So There's a little bit of a gap, though. I don't know where he's going to go for any Buckeye talent, like, currently in the league. And again, so how much of a role will he play in talent, or how much of that is Joe Spallina?
Yeah.
Right. And if that's the case, are they going to turn into a little Syracuse?
Is there any Team 91 guys? Is there any Team 91 guys on
we already talked
Ohio
about
State?
It's going to be Long Island for sure. So, and that working relationship, I mean, those are two guys that were like MLL lifers. I mean, I don't think they ever crossed paths, but obviously, like, they played against each other in big games. They definitely know each other. So it just makes a lot of sense. And I think, good for the PLL. We're a fan of him, but I think they got it right. I think he's the right guy for the job, and it makes me excited to see. He's going to bring, they're just, again, we've talked about identity with the Redwoods, and that being kind of one of their downfalls here of late. They won't lack identity with Anthony Kelly. He knows how to create a culture, and I think that's what they needed most, and I think they got it with him. So, want to keep going? Other PLL news here?
Yeah. Cannons, the Boston Cannons, making waves in the trade, giving away their third overall pick in the 2025 draft for long stick midi Owen Grant. I think he's hybrid, right? You could run him up top, and then obviously you can bump him down low if need be. And then also they gave away their fourth rounder in 2026. So that's some big news, because if you look at this draft, Scott, like, it's not a huge draft this year, I don't think. Or obviously, Curse is going to go number one overall. That kid is an absolute mutant. Had freaking 6 goals in the first quarter of the Yale game this weekend. Finished 9-1. But outside of that, like, there are some polls. We've mentioned the kid Ben Ware, Virch from St. John's. Scott Smith. Is Reynolds from Loyola? Is he a senior?
I don't know, but kids on 0-8 teams don't get drafted.
Yeah, I guess so. But so it's like you ask yourself the question. I think Brian Holman probably asked them, the coaching staff was probably just like, is anyone at 3 better than Owen Grant? And I would argue that is a no. Or there's not like a 100% Ben Ware is better than, or whoever they think is the top guy. Owen Grant, he got injured, obviously. I think that was last year or the year before. But, man, he can shoot the shit out of the ball. He's 200. He's huge. He's massive. He looks like, I hate fucking using this, but he looks like Earhart, but he's huge. He's athletic, can run in between the lines, and he can shoot, and it's going to bring another.
So I think, and I feel strongly about this, I think the better comparison is Hasek than Earhart. And I've heard just you and multiple others talk about LSM like it's a 4. I think he plays close D. Yeah. Like, he played close D at Delaware, not LSM. Now, he would go play LSM if you need a ground ball, like the way that most teams kind of use the best player on the field, like, we'll just do things with you. He would run over the midline all the time, but he played close D, guarded the tackman. To me, on that Cannons team, like, that's where he plays. I look at Graham Hasek, and we used to do that with him. If you need a ground ball, you put Haas on the wing. he has the green light to run the ball over the midline whenever he wants. He goes down, he shoots. They're both Canadian. I think they're both lefties. I'm not totally sure about Grant. But that to me, because I'm with you on the Earhart comparison, but I think he just the physicality, the toughness, the get the ball off the ground, the stick skills, but also the doing that all from a position down low. That I think is the comparison. And the Cannons have Ethan Rawl. He's been good. I would say even really good. I think probably they're hoping for him to take the next step, and maybe that will help partly determine where Grant plays. But when I look at that roster, and you're obviously much closer to it, and I know you got veteran Bryce Young, but he can play up top, right?
Yeah.
He has done that plenty in his career. You have Kilty coming back. You have Epple. I just think of it it's Young, Rawl, Kilty, Epple, Grant. You'll be able to figure it out who's playing up top and who's. Epple and Kilty are obviously down low. With those other three, you kind of figure it out. Who's up top, who's down low, maybe over the course of the season. But that's quite. And I know I'm leaving guys out. I know they have more depth there, but that's quite a crew on the Cannons defense.
And they have obviously Jack Kilty's coming back from that Achilles injury. He looks primed to have probably one of his best years yet. But Garrett Epple, Kilty, Bryce Young, Epple and Young, how much longer are they going to play, right? When I was on that team, and Epple, he wants to win a championship, and I think if the Cannons were to win a championship this year, I think he's hanging them up. So he's
got a little commercial real estate business. I've been seeing him on LinkedIn, updating his profile pic and posting a little bit more. So watch out.
So they got and on paper, I think they have one of the best defenses in the league. And obviously, I'm biased, but Ethan Rawl, right? He got 5'9", quick as shit. He's always that stick's always in there, sticks flying in the air, and then you got Owen Grant's 6'5", 220. It's gonna be wild seeing that coming out of the box.
To that point, week to week, you can do different things. Depending on, and again, I'm going to keep referencing Hasek, but that's how the Archers use him. That's how we used him when I was there. The Archers are a whole different thing now. They have freaking Mason Woodward, who's a freak in his own right, kind of doing the same thing. But if a team's got a big midi, a big physical midi, dodging downhill, if Brennan O'Neal's running out of the box for Denver, you move Owen Grant up, that game, right? Yep. And you run him up top with Ethan, and you throw Bryce down low. If it's if there's a different situation where he makes more sense at attack. But what I love about Canadian defenders, and they're becoming more and more common, is you get great off-ball players there too.
Yeah.
The indoor experience, how to play with your head on the swivel. They're generally good in two-man games. So to get a guy like him who has that kind of indoor style, the physicality, the off-ball D, but then also can cover the ball and can cover the number one guy. With the way Epple slides, now if you're shifting him onto a number two or a Kilty, it's the Cannons again. You're right, it's on paper, but that is quite a group, and I totally agree with you. This was the first time I really went and dug into this draft. And maybe it's because I'm not on Flow TV, or whatever. But I didn't recognize a lot of guys in there. And a lot of the guys that look like they're kind of projected first or second round picks are defenders, are D-middies, So I just think if you're the Redwoods and you need offense, you're just saying, hey, let's get another top 5 pick, where we can get a premier offensive player. And the Cannons had 2 picks up there. Yeah. Right. So that's the Kavanaugh trade. That's what it gets you is they can, I think we've talked about it a lot, but the foregone conclusion is kind of they like Mackesy. They probably feel like they can get him at 4. And so you're basically saying, Owen Grant's our 3rd pick, which if he were coming out of Delaware, people forget because it was 2 years ago. He was hurt for a year. And then I think he kind of, what I understand is he basically kind of got paid to not rush back to the PLL and just focus on indoor, which presumably that won't be an issue here going forward. If he were coming out of Delaware in this draft, I think he would probably be the number 1 pull. He was the guy, right? It's how quickly we forget, but I think it's a really, really good trade for the Cannons, given the fact that they have 2 picks in the top 5, so they can still go get their guy. But I also understand it from a Redwoods perspective to just say, we got to find a way to bring in a high-powered offensive player, and there's not that many of them, so you need to be up near the top of the draft if you're going to do that.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Owen Grant as well, I'm huge on full-time lacrosse guys, right? He plays the NLL, plays PLL. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But
do you though? Because
maybe
Dane's, there's a decent amount of these Canadians who have gone kind of full-time NLL or whatever like that. So,
but I feel like that's the O guys, man. The O guys are getting bags of cash.
These guys aren't getting amount of them. There's a few of them who have done it. There's a few.
Because Graham Hossack, I mean, I'm assuming he's one of the best Canadian or NL. He is the best, multiple defensive player of the year. And then, like, does he play in major series or MSL up north?
I don't know, but he did skip 1 year of outdoor for it, and he skipped half of this past season as well.
And you can't blame those guys. Like, if they're getting paid, like if they're getting thrown $60,000,
and with him, I think it was like a rest thing too. Like, I mean, he's 30 and he's been doing both leagues for a long time, and he got married, and he's like, so it's not a like. Let's just put it this way. Like, hopefully Coach Holman did his diligence and talked to him, or talked to somebody who knows him. Because if you're gonna make that trade, I think it makes perfect sense. But you definitely need to know he's a guy who wants to play outdoor, who plans on playing outdoor. But he's super young. He was a stud outdoor in college. I'd be shocked if he isn't. But there's always a little bit of a question mark with that.
Yeah. Another rumor in this trade that I heard was the Redwoods. So they traded him that pick. The Redwoods cannot draft Colter Mackesy. That's what I heard. So.
Well, and I think we talked about this, but I think if you look at it, the obvious Kirst goes 1. So who has 2? Are the Redwoods at 2 and 3 now?
Yeah, so they'll pick up a Sam King or a McAdory, depending on how that goes.
Yeah, or a Kavanaugh and a McAdory.
Yeah. Or I don't think I 100% do not think Kavanaugh is going to go to the Redwoods. I don't think so. I mean, in my opinion, I don't know. I just think they're going to pick up an ex-attackman and the King kid from Harvard maybe, or McAdory. They've already stated that he's a Team 91 guy.
Yeah, but I'm going to keep doing this. He's not an ex-attackman. You keep saying that, but the dude is a midfielder.
I know, but
I do think that they'll pick him. The Spallina tie runs deep, so I have no doubt he goes in one of those 2 spots.
He can play
the other spot. I just Sam King's been really good. Sam King's 5'10". I don't know. Chris Kavanaugh.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We'll see.
Mean, well, I guess we will see. But that's my point with this draft. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's no obvious. Is Sam King really good? Is he having a great season? Is he putting up a ton of points? Yes to all those questions.
Yeah.
Is he a starting ex-attackman day 1 in the PLL? I mean, that's a big spot to step into. It's
also, what are the look at the Water Dogs roster. What are they going to do? They pick up Kirst right at 1. What are they going to do with? I mean, they got they got Sowers.
Zed's out.
That's right.
Zed's
Achilles. He's done. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that actually now becomes a really easy plug in there with Sowers, Kirst, and
Kirst can pretty much just flip flop from X to the right side.
Ooh, that's gonna be that team's
gonna be a problem.
Yeah, we'll see if they figure out the face-off X or whatever. But yeah, that's quite a unit for sure. So
yeah.
Okay, so I mean it's that's gonna be fun to watch. Anything else, Kyle, PLL wise? Obviously, we're gonna have Spencer Ford here shortly joining us, so we'll dig into some of the questions we've been talking about. Really understand that GM role a little bit better, hopefully from him.
Yeah.
Anything else before we kind of jump into some college lacrosse recap and look ahead?
I think that's all the news, and it's just the whip snakes, cannons, and they've kind of been making some moves. All its teams have been kind of quiet. So
Anthony Kelly, known big motherfucker.
Yeah, big motherfucker.
Okay, all right. So college lacrosse. So you said it. Top story of this weekend, probably Maryland, right? Goes down. And you got a fucking shit-eating grin on your face, like you said something right, because I said don't bet against the Terps. Whatever, they probably weren't going to go undefeated. So Michigan, it's interesting. Michigan's had their number, right? And Coach Connery goes to Michigan from Maryland, and the way I understand it was not a very pleasant departure from Maryland. I think him and Tillman, I think he took some recruits, and him and Tillman have, I don't know if they have personal beef, but I've heard. I've heard that there's there's no love lost. So, Maryland's you're winning that because you're playing for national championships every year. But Connery's now won 4 straight, I believe, against his former team. So clearly, he's got a beat on whatever the Terps are doing, and he gets his guys ready to play. And so it was going to happen. You get into conference play, somebody was going to take down the Terps. What a season of parity, man. It is really hard to look at this top 10 and say this is the team that we're going to see. Like we had that with Virginia and we've had that with versions of Maryland. This season is as up in the air as any I can remember.
Yeah. And, you know, Joe Walters in cage, 9 saves. I don't, you know, if Spanos is wearing 1, do they win that game? You know, I don't.
But what did Spanos do? He didn't do shit either. I think that Urksa had like 5 points or something like that. But
yeah,
they don't have another guy really. And Spanos is good, but it's a team offense. But I don't know. I'm not. It's not fluky. Like Michigan deserves to win the game, but triple overtime. Maryland had a lot of chances. It just seemed like they just couldn't really. They just didn't have that extra little bit of gas in this.
Yeah, and Maryland, right? They don't need. Right, they're going to make the tournament just from their wins that they've had, unless they just completely tank, which is not going to happen. And
no, exactly.
Like Michigan's probably got to win that conference, and they can. They could. They've shown it. They proved it in the past. Yeah, they have. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see that unravel. It's like, but the parity in college lacrosse right now, man. It's like, you know, we call something, we say this team, and then again, like last night, Ohio State. We'll talk about them at the end, but you know, Cuse looks like that they're about to go. Cuse is about to go on a really. The schedule they're about to run into right now, we're going to see exactly who that team is. And they had a great statement win against Colgate, who isn't a slouch. And, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out over the next week or two.
Cuse
is back.
Quietly. It was loud with Cuse early. They lose. Everybody forgets. And now, obviously, like Manhattan, get right game. Colgate's kind of like hit or miss, it seems like week to week, but I feel like Cuse is finding like some midfield, like consistent midfield play here. So I'm sure they'll fucking lose next week, and you know, now that I'm doing this, but like I do think I've keep saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it. Cuse, UNC, Duke, Hop, like these teams, like who's going to get better the most over the season? One of those teams, I think, is going to be a Final Four run. Cuse, UNC, Hop. One of those teams.
Yeah. Who's
going to improve the most over the course of the season? I'm just watching. It's eye test, but I'm just watching those games, thinking like I still believe in this Cuse team. Like I just think they have the pieces, and I feel like they're starting to find a rhythm. Maybe it's just because they played Manhattan and they scored 22 goals.
Yeah.
But you know, Spallina was like 6-5 against Colgate. You know, so let's see. But let's not talk about them too much, because every time I do this, they lay an egg the next week. So who do they? I know you've talked about this stretch of games, but it's ACC play, right?
Yeah, it's ACC play coming up. I want to say they got UNC coming up, or is that Army plays UNC?
And so UNC absolutely throttles High Point.
Yeah.
Right, and High Point.
No, they got Virginia. So Cuse has Virginia on the ACC network Saturday, 1 p.m. at Klockner. Cool. So that's at UVA. I bet you that's going to be a good
slippery grass. Watch out for the slippery grass.
Going to be a good game. Then they go UVA, Notre Dame, Cornell, Duke, UNC.
Yeah,
that's a
It'll
schedule.
be a fun run. So you I was just touching on UNC quick. So they destroy High Point. Was it 14-2 or something like that? And before I bash High Point, they did lose a coach, and presumably they lost some recruits with said coach as well.
Yep.
And John Crawley, who like was, you know and respect very much, but the High Point's been abysmal this year.
Yeah.
And Crawley came to fame in the pro lacrosse world for in the Rabel documentary on Hulu. He like calls Paul out in the locker room, like for not running the play.
I had left the locker room at that point in time.
And I think all of us that weren't in that locker room, like I have to admit, it was kind of like, you know, Atlas porn. Like you guys had all these big name players, and we're just watching it. Like, look at these fucking idiots. Like they can't even figure it out in their own locker room. And like he finally was like the voice that stepped up and kind of like. And it was impressive. Like clearly he was a guy that everybody respected. He's a great leader. It's why he's a Division I head coach, and he's like 28 years old. So, but did his rise to stardom start on Hulu? And is he in over his head there at High Point? Or did a lot of players leave when Torpy left, and it's just going to take him a year or two to turn this thing around? But like High Point's been a frisky team the last 5 years. 14-2 that ain't good.
Yeah, I mean they had Jokic of lacrosse, Asher Nolting, but he's not there anymore. So Yeah, I think he's going to do well there. Obviously, like you just said, he probably took a lot of recruits with him. I'm assuming. I don't know, but
I don't think a lot of kids at High Point
going to Brown.
I don't think so. So I don't know if he took a lot with him, but like for example, like I know of one kid who decommitted and went to Richmond. I mean, I just think like there's probably, there's going to be some turnover when a coach leaves, whether it's like recruits coming in or guys hitting the transfer portal just because they were playing for tour. Like you just never really know. And also this is one game. Like I'm just giving him shit, but they definitely seem to be a little down from the High Point that we're used to. But let's not take away from UNC. Like 14-2, Duffy.
7
Petro.
Points. Duffy and Petro 7 points combined.
Yeah,
English.
what did Petro didn't. What he didn't pass the ball one time the entire game? Was that the stat I saw? He shot every single time he got it.
Shot every single time. He had 1 assist. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, he had 1 pass. But I mean,
it's not his fault. He's catching the ball. No one else is open. He's got to shoot it.
And it's not his job to pass. His job is to score goals and like bring some riz to that team.
Yeah, we were talking to Marcus, and he said like I think it was like he had 27 goals and 1 assist or something. He's like, ain't nothing wrong with that stat line.
Nothing wrong with that stat line. So UNC is they're doing a good job. But again, let's get into ACC play and see how they do. But you do like to see them just kind of bully a team they're better than, which like this UNC hasn't been doing this stuff of late. So like, in fact, I would almost venture to say like a year or two ago, High Point is probably fucking favored against UNC with some of the teams that they've rolled out there. So like they clearly are, some measure of back to a level where, they should be competitive in ACC play and against the top dogs, and that's fun to watch.
And their next game, like Army, right? They're the number 3 team in the country. I think they dropped to like number 9. Like, are you guys frauds? Or are you frauds? The U.S. military.
Can we talk about Army?
Yeah. Are you guys frauds? Are you like? I love the United States military. I have a bunch of friends that serve there. I have a nonprofit supporting our military veterans, but you got to show up against UNC. You need a statement win. They don't have any ranked opponents on their schedule except for UNC. So they need to make a statement win, I think. And UNC travels to West Point, so on the road, we'll see how they do. And Army's going to be, they're going to be freaking hungry to prove people wrong. But again, I think it should be a good game. But I think they need to win that game. They got to win that game.
Just like and this is the thing with Army. If you're going to shit on Army first, we got to say, well, I love our country. Like we're talking about the college lacrosse team.
Yeah, they're all going to serve. They're all going to serve.
It can't be. Yeah, but whatever. Like I'm very grateful for their service.
Can't say that. You just said that.
They can't beat. Well, my caveats are actually different. Like there's 4 or 5 kids on that team who I coached from Atlanta. Justin Ward, a great friend of mine, teammate of mine at Loyola, as their offensive coordinator. Like I have all the reasons in the world to cheer for them, and I love all those guys. Sean Byrne, the Plunkett boys, Braden Fountain, like a big chunk of like the big time players on their team are shout out Thunder Lacrosse and Atlanta kids.
Heck yeah.
But they can't fucking beat BU, and they haven't in the last 5 years. And every fucking year, Army's in the top 5 and BU's like not in the top 20. I don't understand this. And I'm not, again, not a research guy. Not a junkie watcher of college lacrosse, so please somebody tell me where I'm wrong here. But like, I don't understand why nobody talks about BU. They win the fucking Patriot League every year.
Yeah, they
beat Army every year, and every fucking year Army's in the top 5 at the beginning of the season at some point. Like it's just weird to me that they get that. And I'm not saying that this really is less about them and more about BU. Like Army gets all this hype and BU doesn't get any, and BU all they do is just come out and beat them. So. That's the puzzle that Army has to solve right now. Like they seem to do really well against everybody else. When we saw them almost beat Maryland 2 years ago in the tournament, like they have been knocking on the door of a Final Four, and I do think they deserve to be top 10 team for sure, top 15. But BU should be up there too if they are. And I guess I'm sure BU's lost some games or there's some reasons that they're not. But man, that program has really, they're relatively new and they are just consistently good and recruiting very well and putting out, starting to put out some pro level talent. So like great win by BU. Army, yeah, like you got to find a chip on your shoulder. You've been February heroes for a few years now, and it's time to peak at the right time of the season and beat BU in a Patriot League tournament and get yourselves back into the show, which again, I get it. Two or 3 years ago, they did have a good showing and won the Patriot League, but you want to see that from kind of this core group that's been at Army there. So yeah, UNC is a big game for sure, but I think they're going to play great. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they beat them.
Yeah.
But with them, what you really got to watch is the Patriot League tournament, and can they get over the Terrier hump that has been so difficult for them.
Yeah, and the last piece we're going to touch on is like Cornell, right? Those all black jerseys they wear. Those all black jerseys they wore were freaking awesome. I love those jerseys. But Kurst, right? First quarter sock trick, 6 goals, and then he finished 9-1. And then Ryan Goldstein was 2-8, had 8 helpers. They look tough to beat. Obviously, they had that one loss, but to Penn State. But Penn State's also not a slouch team either. And Kurst is I don't know how he does not win the Torton. It's crazy the numbers he's putting up and just how confident he plays, and it's just like he's playing, at another level than everyone else. So it's awesome to
pleasure
watch.
to watch.
Yeah,
it's pleasure to watch. Cornell's good. So, Penn State, Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, and what all of a sudden turned into like, is this a battle for number 1? Right when Maryland goes down, which by the way, I don't like. Does Maryland immediately not become number 1 just because they lost one game when everybody else has one loss too? But Maryland goes down, and Penn State was sitting there at number 2, and they
dropped to 6
against Ohio State.
Yeah, they dropped to 6. I mean, Maryland only dropped 1 spot. I think they're well deserving of that. They shouldn't. They definitely shouldn't have stayed at 1, but I think they're well deserving of the 2 spot. And then Ohio State jumped all the way from 9 to 3. And we've touched on this. They lost to Utah game 1. They could be undefeated right now and be the number 1 team in the country. But that Utah loss was obviously sucked. Game 1 is what.
And
it
this
is
why. And we got Spencer joining us here, so we'll pull him in. But this is why, if you're a college athletic director, you probably shouldn't listen to Kyle and Scott, and when you're deciding if you should fire your coaches, because we were ready to have Nick Myers coach a middle school team.
Yeah.
And then now they're 9-1, number 4.
And then the last piece, right? Controversial issue last night. Tambroni challenges a goal. And then slow-mo that I'm watching the game live, it couldn't be any more clear as day. He hits the bar, goes about a foot in the back of the net, comes out, and then they wave the goal off. So NCAA, you made the rule, video replay. Does Maryland have the same cameras that Dartmouth has? Like what are we doing here? Like, it's got to be clear, all the same camera angles, and the refs clearly didn't have the angle that we had on TV because
they had the Flow TV angle.
It was like pixelated. They probably couldn't see shit. So get your shit together.
All right. So, gonna bring in Spencer Ford here. Spencer, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, we got him.
Clear as day.
What's up, Spence? How are we doing?
Good. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah,
and hear from you.
You too. So let us give you a proper introduction here before we start getting you with all the hard-hitting questions that we want to ask you.
Yes.
So for the listeners who maybe don't know, Spencer's been around professional lacrosse forever, right? Was a GM and a coach with the Atlanta Blaze, with the Bayhawks, Towson State, record-setting attackman. What else, Kyle? Help me.
Yeah, just Towson State, now Towson University. Did you build that place, Spencer? Pretty much.
What did they have to do to become a university? Was it just a certain GPA they needed to hit, or?
I think that was well after May. The GPA was important.
But Spencer played Major League Lacrosse. Baltimore Bayhawks, Los Angeles Riptide, Rochester Rattlers set a league record 47 assists. And 50. Well, ChatGPT is wrong, Spencer. You're gonna have to get on that.
It's already corrected that. It hurt us.
General manager for the Chesapeake Bayhawks, where I played for you, and led them to multiple MLL championships. Head coach of the Philadelphia Barrage. Were you head coach of the Barrage?
Yeah.
Yeah, head coach of the Barrage, and then newly minted PLL GM of the Carolina Chaos. So first off, congrats on the gig. I know you were probably itching to get back into pro lacrosse and how much you care about it and you've been involved with it. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I'll just say too, Spence, like obviously you got 2 guys here who love you and we're super excited to see you back in pro lacrosse. It's better with you. I have to ask though, before we get into just how this all came to fruition, because we do have some questions. Like the GM thing is new, so we've been very like speculating on here of like what exactly this is going to look like, and we're hoping you can help answer that. But you were the GM for the Bayhawks when Kyle was there. You were the same role for the Blaze when I was there. Who was better, me or Kyle?
Well, wait. Are we talking about 2010, Kyle?
I don't know, Spencer. But be careful about the answer.
Scott was in high school, I think, in 2010, wasn't he?
I will say this, you guys. I was thinking about this. You guys are two of my all-time favorites in terms of just people, players, personalities, how funny you both are. I don't know. Kyle never played 57 minutes of a 60-minute game. Right.
There we go.
There you go.
That's my guy. The Blaze ties run deep, Hartsy.
Blase.
Blaze ties run deep. So Spence, can you in a real question?
So Spence, was that a half-ass answer? You gonna say one or the other? Or you just said he played 57 minutes. That's all you said.
He answered. We got it. We got the answer now. Move on. Can you walk us through like how this all came to be with the chaos? And like what I'm really curious is just, like literally like some of the simple questions, like, are you going to be at every game? Is this a role? Like, is this a truly just a roster management role? Like with the Blaze, you were there, you were on the sideline, you were kind of a part of it in that sense. And this GM role now, is it fully roster construction? Like, or is that all even fleshed out yet?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty interesting. It's going to be Roy's show. He and his staff will be on the sidelines. I will be at, I always go to the Baltimore games. I drive up to Philly, just as a fan. But it's not going to be something where I'm traveling each and every week to be at practice, to be at the games. I will not be on the when I'm there. I believe I'll be up in the booth. Just obviously watching players and doing some of the things that I've done in the past. But it's obviously very different from when I was with the Bayhawks and with the Blaze, where I was actually a box coach. And I think that was just because we just didn't have one. So it was like, all right, you're going to do it. But it's pretty cool. It's strictly, roster construction. Roy and I, speak daily about, the players that he likes. And then I look at it like my job to go out and find those guys and try to construct the roster, to his liking, where he and his staff can coach it. So it's going to be very remote. There is a travel budget for me, where I can pretty much get to every single game. I don't believe that that's going to be the expectation. It's going to be more behind the scenes, studying, handling salary cap, things of that nature.
Yeah. And Spence, what do you think, like another question, just like the identity of this Carolina Chaos team, right? The Chaos have been pretty Canadian heavy, in recent years. And obviously, Towers running that team, right? They've been pretty successful with Blaze Reardon in between the pipes. So is there anybody you guys are looking at in the draft where you guys have sitting at with the picks and stuff? Obviously, you don't want to give away your hand here, but what's that Carolina Chaos team's identity going to be, and what do you see it looking like?
I think that, I strongly believe, just as a fan in previous seasons, their defense is championship ready. I think, we play very solid defense, and then having Blaze back, as a stopper, it's very easy to be championship ready. We're going to do everything we can to try to score more goals. I think that's the biggest emphasis for Roy. So we are really evaluating the college players right now. I think we could all guess who they are, to try to help us manufacture goals and really support that defensive end. So we need the shorty position.
Sorry, Spence, but on that, would you trade every single pick for the next 5 years for the number 1 overall to get CJ Kirst?
He is tremendous. What did he have? 9 in the last game.
6 goals in the first quarter. 6 goals in the first quarter. Finished 9-1.
I think I traded every single Blaze pick to get you, Rhett. So I think we would definitely do something like that.
Well, that was a mistake, and somehow you still got another job.
There wasn't many checks and balances in the MLO, I don't think.
Yeah.
Spencer, you talked about it, and I think we would both agree, right? Like, you've got Blaze and that leadership and a proven defense who's all still kind of in their prime, really has played together. It has been like it's probably more so maybe than any team. The identity of the Chaos is like Blaze makes saves, Canadians play good offense late in the season, and they had like a ton of success doing that. And then last year, and kind of the last 2 years, there was this weird like in between where it did seem like they were getting more American with some of their draft picks and some of the guys they were rolling out there. But obviously, you still have Josh Byrne. What's kind of the latest with him? And is he, I assume, a big piece of what you guys plan to build around offensively?
Yeah, I mean, he's still, what we consider to be, one of our top, if not our best offensive players. So I think that we have to alleviate some of his pain in terms of ball carry and just a lot of ball dominant time. So, with it being now American with, what we have as one Canadian, one NLL guy on in the mix, we have to put guys around him that can distribute the ball and maybe make the offense a little bit more easy where, we can get him to where he was doing things, off ball and at late in the clock off the dodge after we have some offensive movement. So I think that's the plan.
And the other like, I think added part of this role that we've talked about is just, there's tough conversations with roster construction and cuts and like, salary and all that. Do you feel like that's going to be a advantage for you guys and for Roy not having to kind of get in the weeds on some of that stuff and letting you kind of, be the bad guy and have some of those straightforward conversations on guys you're not going to bring back, or maybe guys that are, going to change roles or change, where they sit on the salary cap? Like, have you guys talked about that? And what's kind of the working relationship with you and Roy and like making some of those decisions, and then who communicates those decisions?
Yeah, it was actually the first conversation that we had of how we were going to handle things, and we've been pretty lockstep in how we've approached everything. But yeah, the goal is that Roy's going to be the coach and he'll do the tough part on the field, and then I'm going to have those tough conversations of talking about salaries and extensions and things of that nature. So I think it will alleviate some of that pain on his end where he doesn't have to do both. He can be strictly the coach and kind of demand things that way. And then I can do the behind the scenes things with the money and where guys stand. And obviously those tough conversations that are needed to be had.
Nice. Spencer, give us a good Bayhawk story, man. Most memorable Bayhawk story when you were there. Could be.
Do you remember the you were still with us when we went to Canada, remember? I don't know if it was Hamilton. Or Toronto.
Yeah, it was Hamilton, yeah.
Their team. Okay, remember we shot the fireworks off?
Yeah.
Do you remember? I think we had just gotten Kimmel, and we ended up going out all night. The bus was parked and ready for us to come back, and we ended up buying fireworks and just start shooting them out in the street at people.
Yeah, in another country. In another country.
That was one of the greatest things. And then I think we got on the bus. Everybody rolled onto the bus. We were probably waiting for Smitty Lax, and then we I think we got stopped at the border because I think some guys didn't have passports.
Yeah.
That
checks out.
It was a good one.
That crossing the border. For those Hamilton games, I remember like the official league policy. Like one year I had to cross on my own because I couldn't travel with the team for whatever reason. And they were like, yeah, just don't tell them you're playing it, like you're making any money up here. Like you got to just lie to the border patrol about what you're doing here, or else it's going to raise some flags. And I want to ask you about Spencer Jr. and about Maryland, but just to make sure, like I'm covering everything with the chaos. We're not great with our research, especially in college lacrosse or anything on this show. So, what draft pick do you guys have?
We're the fifth pick in each round.
Okay,
so and that's it. One pick per round, fifth pick in each round.
Yeah, for this season, and we actually traded our third and fourth round picks for next year already. We got a Slanian and the kid Carter Parlett from the Cannon.
Yeah.
And then picked up just recently Josh Sawada from Denver.
Carter Parlett had a great sixes showing, man. He looked good.
I agree. He was phenomenal.
He looked good.
Yeah, was that what sparked that, Spence, or did you have your eye on him previously, or did you see him in sixes and then say that's a guy we want?
I saw him in sixes and just saw how competitive he was, and to be honest with you, how physical, and then to get the ball down. I know it's a different field size, but what he was able to do on both defensive end and in transition on the offensive end, I was pretty impressed, and I think that there's a need for that.
Yeah. And then Zawada, obviously, probably a little bit of a crowded situation there in Denver, but a guy who had a really great college career, Michigan and then Duke, and can play behind the cage. You just talked about finding guys who can distribute the ball. So that makes a lot of sense. Is there, when you think about, you talked about it. I mean, I have to assume your focus in evaluating college players right now and looking at that 5th overall pick is on the offensive side. I mean, we've talked about maybe it's a little bit of a down year in the draft, especially on offense. Maybe you don't see it that way. Are there any, and you don't have to give away who you're looking at for the 5th overall pick, but are there any like diamond in the rough college guys, like maybe later round or undrafted free agents that you've seen as you watch the season that you think could be impact PLL players?
As of now, I think that we all probably, have the same top guys in mind.
Yeah.
And we're still studying that, a kid that's known, and I will throw this out there, that may not be considered high on draft boards, but I think Owen Hiltz from Syracuse is just tremendous. You guys remember Cloutier when he first came in. I mean, he just dominated the MLL and has always had a knack for scoring. And there may not be a great comparison in how they play, but just to be able to get the ball in and out of your stick and not compromise ball time, he's a guy that's really, jumped on my radar.
And cool. I think another guy that would look good in a Chaos jersey and fits that mold is Levi Virch, Canadian lefty. So yeah, be interesting to see how the draft shapes out.
There's free advice from
we
Kyle.
Are tracking, Kyle. We are tracking.
So yeah,
we're on the same page.
Fuck yeah,
Spencer. I mentioned it's pretty cool. I think again, I'm sure Kyle has similar stories, but I remember Spencer Jr. Was a stalwart with the Blaze, warming up goalies and running around the field, and then obviously I left the Blaze and for the Archers and didn't see him for a few years. And the next time I see him, he's like 6'8" and he's dunking on people and the big club tournaments. And now he's a freshman on one of maybe the best college lacrosse team in the country. How's that been? I mean, is it crazy for you to think about he's now at this stage and living his dream? And have you, I assume, been at the Maryland games? Like, you have any thoughts on that team and what makes them special this year?
I'll be honest with you. With you two and then just a lot of the guys that we've had in the locker room, I mean, you guys are just as important to him and his growth and his love for the game. And obviously, God rest his soul, Coach Hunt's, you guys just had such a huge impact on him and what he wanted to do. A lot of people don't know this, but Spence quit lacrosse at a young age to play baseball. And it wasn't until we came back or I got him out to the pro games when I was a GM with Chesapeake and then obviously into Atlanta. And he just fell in love with it again, just because of, having the relationships that he had with you guys and how you guys treated him in the locker room and on the field and allowed him to shoot on goal and things of that nature. So it's been pretty cool. And then to watch him grow. And as you said, I mean, I think he's 6'3", 6'4" now, just built pretty well. He's actually going to redshirt this year. And then he'll start his career next year. But it's, I go to every game, the motto of be the best. These players live that. I mean, they have been so good to him and so supportive in his role and as being a freshman. And I'm super excited to see him kind of, make his own path and see what he does over the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah. And Spence, another question for you, how, his transition from boys Latin, obviously you played there and then he was one of the best players to come through there, going to Maryland. And obviously he's redshirting this year, but how's that been for him just being on the team and being a good teammate and obviously not in a starting role, but what's that experience been for him?
Monday through Friday, crazy. I didn't think this was going to happen, but he calls me every single day, which is just a blessing. I can't believe he's my son because I don't know that I would do that. But Monday through Friday, he's in great spirits. He's on the scout team. He lifts every day. He's being a good teammate. Saturdays are tough. They're a little emotional for him just because he's not out there helping his teammates.
Yeah.
But I will say, my wife and I went to the first game when they played Richmond, and we actually saw him cheer. He was actually out on the field, cheering for his teammates. And I said to her, I was like, if that was me, I'd sit on the end of the bench and probably flip the bird to my coach. I would be so pissed.
Yeah.
But he's just such a different person, and it's going to help him grow. I mean, we know he's great at lacrosse. He's so super skilled and smart. But this is going to help him kind of develop maybe a little bit of hate in his heart and maybe that callous that's needed to step forward and show what he's got next year.
Oh, yeah. And no, there's no doubt he will. The kid works his ass off and was a big time recruit. And I'm curious, Spanos, and again, I don't subscribe to Big Ten Network, so pardon me if this take is off. But he's a big physical attackman. Stylistically, like, is he someone that you think Spence looks at? And also, do you think he's got a good pro career ahead of him? I mean, I just think Maryland is so well balanced. It's hard to look at that team and say, like, this is the guy that makes it go. But for me, when they need a goal, when they need a big play offensively, I've been really impressed with him this year. And just, he kind of just bulls his way to the cage a lot of times. Is he the leader on that offense? And do you think he's a pro lacrosse guy?
So number one, he is a special young man. He's one of the guys that has taken Spence under his wing and has been just so amazing to him. Obviously, he did redshirt, so he knows what it's all about. But just being a fantastic friend and teammate, I think he can play. I've known him since he was at Malvern, and I watched him destroy my Spalding team. And just his knack for getting those big goals that you talk about with that big frame. He's actually an underrated passer as well. I think if given the opportunity next year, he can come in and have a pretty darn good pro career.
Yep. Awesome. Well, Hartsey, anything else? Spencer, thank you so much for I texted you an hour before the show and you made it work and jumped on here with us. And you're off camera, but we've already talked with our producer. We're going to get a great looking pic of you on the sideline, the skinniest jeans. We might even crop the jeans to make them a little skinnier, just to make sure that everybody gets the right vibe for what's behind the camera. But we're so happy to see you back in pro lacrosse, and we're so grateful that you joined us and shared your wisdom and some insight.
You are two of my all-time favorites, and that will never change. I've enjoyed both of you guys on the field and our friendship. I couldn't say enough great things about both of you. And we will be at the Charlotte weekend. So if you're there,
you got to come down to the Carolina game. It's the home game. Hartsey and I are going to be up there together. So we can hang out if you make it down to that one. That's one game I'll be at. Yep, I will be at the home game.
Heck yeah!
Perfect.
Thanks for tuning in, Spence. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Yeah, what a legend. I don't know, Hartsey, if you've got like a lot more in terms of college lacrosse. I mean, I'd love to digest just for a few minutes on some of the stuff that he shared with us.
I got nothing. I got nothing on college lacrosse. I don't want to talk about college lacrosse anymore. I want to talk about the PLL. That's all I want to talk about. I cannot wait until freaking end of May. I might even just fly down there to go just stay at the dorms at training camp just to be there.
In Albany.
Yeah, we'll bring a mic set up.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah, look, I think here's a bow to tie on college. We covered all the big games from last week. I see here, of course, I didn't even know the rankings. Who's number one?
Number one is Cornell.
Yeah,
Cornell.
Okay, good.
Cornell, Cornell, Maryland, Ohio State, Princeton, UNC, Penn State, Notre Dame, Cuse, Army, Richmond, rounding out number 10.
Okay, so look, conference play starts. We're going to learn a lot about the ACC teams. We know Cornell is good. We know Maryland's good. But we're going to see teams lose. Like, we get into conference play, like even the best teams, if you're going to lose, if you're the Maryland or Cornell, most of the time it happens in conference when you're playing teams that know you really well and guys that you've played against for 4 years in a row. Like, those are usually true tests. So we'll learn a lot in the coming weeks, and the closer we inch to May, the closer we inch to ESPN games and high quality lacrosse in college. So we'll definitely we'll dive deeper, and we'll get some college lacrosse experts on and cover those games as we get closer to tournament time. So great conversation with Spencer right away. One question answered, not traveling with the team. I mean, because I was curious, is he going to be an assistant coach? And now I have more questions. So Roy Colsey's going to put together a staff. So now, theoretically, the Chaos, and I assume the Redwoods, have an extra position on their staff, which is an interesting, advantage, really, in a lot of ways. If they're getting their full scope of assistance and they have a GM on staff.
Someone gets whacked, though, money-wise. So when they add that GM, the assistant coach comes on board, and they know that they're not making pretty much making nothing.
We on the Archers, Bates was always real good about finding non-travel coaches to help. So we had guys who weren't officially on staff who would be just at training camp, who would cut up film, who would do statistical analysis. So look, again, I don't want to put the PLL on blast because it's you have to make it work. The league can't pay people millions of dollars. Like, we all get it. We talked about this all last week in terms of how the compensation works, and it works that way for a reason, because, you know, that's where we're at in the professional ranks as a sport. So it's not so, you know, it's not so much to beat them down, but I do think probably part of the magic trick of like putting together a great staff is like, you got to find the guys that can do it, that are at that stage where there's inherent value to coaching in the PLL. Again, maybe you're a club coach, maybe you're a high school coach and being around it, maybe you're a college coach even. You know, I think the PLL is getting to the point where if I'm a recruit going to play at a college for a school, and, you know, Jim Mitchell's talking about, you know, I could see you in the PLL in 4 years and I'm around that league, like that's not a bad thing to have. Like, you even see that with like Belichick, like college football coaches who have NFL experience, or college basketball who have put a lot of guys in the draft. Like, that can be a recruiting tool. But so I think if you're Train, if you're Colsey and Spencer and Spallina, and like you're trying to build staffs, that's one of the things you got to look for, is how can we find great people who maybe don't need to make a living as an assistant PLL coach, but will see the value in kind of going on tour with us this summer and being a part of this.
Yeah, another interesting thing, you know, he brought up where you were asking about him is like, what are they looking for, right? What is this Carolina Chaos team? Obviously, we know it starts with Blaze Reardon in between the pipes, and they have a very good defense. But they have, like, you know, what he said was, you know, they want to find a way to score more goals, right? Chaos have been, you know, get Josh Byrne the ball, 2-man game, and let's just see what happens. So It's going to be interesting to see who they pick up in the draft, because if they alleviate some pressure off of Byrne where he can kind of, you know, limit his reps, I mean, they're going to be dangerous.
A lot of the Canadians they've had have only been successful when they play with each other. So like those couple, like those championship teams, and it was Kluche, Byrne, Chase Frazier, Dane. Like, you have these guys where it's like when you put them all together, they're elite. But you had like Kluche hasn't had a ton of success necessarily on kind of other environments. I mean, Dane obviously is pretty special, but really, if you look at his pro lacrosse field career for how long he's played, he's only got like 3 really good seasons of like 8-9 seasons being a professional lacrosse player. You know, certainly Chase Frazier like wasn't a part of anything else really, and not like a dodge guy, kind of has to be in the 2-man game. That doesn't apply to Byrne. Like, Byrne was a stud on the Chesapeake Bayhawks. You know, he's kind of obviously his career at Hofstra was elite. He's kind of a guy that, yes, like you can fit him into any offense. I mean, and so I think hearing him say, like, we got to find guys that can distribute the ball, right? We've got a guy over there on the lefty wing who can stretch the field as a shooter. I mean, if they can get a true dodging attackman who can soak a number 1 matchup, and now all of a sudden, you know, you got to put a number 2 somewhere on Byrne, like there's ways to probably unlock him that I'm sure Spencer's looking at. And I hadn't realized, I mean, Zawada is like an interesting pickup, right? I mean, he was kind of part of that Young Outlaws crew that was frisky, and obviously they got Pat Kavanaugh, so you get him kind of at a discount. But work to do, and he's got a tough job, man. You want to make that offense good, and we're looking at the draft, and it's like, I don't know.
I think if you're a Carolina Chaos fan, though, you got to be excited. I mean, it's new beginning. Obviously, you didn't want to see Towers go, but they got, you know, Spencer Ford's a proven GM. He's put together championship teams, and I'm excited for him. I think if you're a Carolina Chaos fan, you got to be excited about that. So.
And a lot of times it's little moves that can make the difference. Like, it's just the small pickups here or there, that third D midi, that kind of extra attackman, or that extra draft pick that turns into somebody. Like, those are the moves that really can change a franchise. And I mean, like I said, he's kind of under the radar, already made some of those moves. So I agree. I think it's a big win for the Chaos and for Chaos fans to have him looking at your roster all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, thanks to Spence. Anything else, Hartsey, before we call it a day here?
Nada. I got nothing.
Cool. Well, we'll do what we always do. We'll get this up and going, and then next week we'll talk college lacrosse and continue to track these pro storylines, and then, you know, we can preview, like, we're gonna get Anthony Kelly on in the next couple of weeks for sure. Hear his vision for the Redwoods. Maybe teaser. Maybe see if we can get him and Spallina on together, and, you know, we'll do like some some dating games where we'll like have them answer questions about each other, see how well they work together. Like, we also need to look into a data encryption sponsor, because clearly the PLL's tapped our phones. We were talking about it, and they broke news right before this podcast. We can't have that happen again. So we're looking into that for sure.
Episode 9, a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
Peace.